As I went through the house, I realized the dreams had been unnecessary. Coming in through the back, I was greeted by the ghosts of the Hargrave clan. Persephone and Jasper cooking in the kitchen, Marguerite doing dishes as she hummed to herself, Venus reading a magazine at the table, a tall woman in a long dress who moved about the kitchen like a friendly wind. Those were the good times, the children young, their lives uncomplicated. There were other voices there as well, a less deep version of the cop voice that I associated with John Jr., and a lower voice I associated with the narrator of the stories. Moving into the living room, I saw them going about their lives as they relaxed in the shadow of their family. Venus holding up a dress to make sure it fit right, standing beside a younger version of herself as she put a similar dress on a doll. Jasper on the drums, a kid of no more than 8, accompanying him on guitar. He was no longer the leaking phantom I had seen before, and he looked better whole as his eyes sparkled with mirth. Marguerite sat sketching at the table, as not far off an older version stood painting by the window. By the window, a baby Persephone looked longingly out into the yard, just looking for an escape from her cage. Outside, Persephone worked at a box of flowers, looking in on occasions, as if she could see the baby she had been, right behind the glass. They were gathered here now, the house, their prison, and their home, but I could feel a fifth waiting to be added to the cast. I mounted the stairs, feeling the chilly presence of the spirits as they passed through me. Kids racing down to breakfast, teens heading down for school, adults heading to a funeral as they prepared to leave this place for the last time, scattered to the wind like dandelion fluff. Why was I still here? I thought. I wasn't trapped. I could leave any time I wanted. Why did I choose to let this place keep me? Curiosity is like a chain, someone had said. The stronger the pull, the tighter the collar. That seemed apt, but I couldn't stop myself from being dragged by my own need to know. I turned to the first door on the right, and it opened with a warm groan of old wood. This was no horror movie tomb. This was the front door to the home of a well-loved relation, the sound welcoming, inviting, and I expected to see a fire within and smell tea brewing. John Jr.'s was the most intact room I had seen in the entire house. The interior was a mess of moldering papers, ancient books, and mildew, but Carter seemed to have taken nothing from it. It looked the way I imagined Sherlock Holmes's study would look, a perfect combination of seemingly orderless clutter and anal retentive destruction. The walls seemed to be made of corkboard, and they had pens and paper across them, as John Jr. tried to piece together suspects from the evidence he had available. There were towering shelves of books, a roll-top desk, a small single bed, and on the low table in the middle, I found an honest-to-God pipe sitting on a stand. I sighed, knowing already what had to be done. The shelves went over pretty easily, but the corkboards were screwed in tight. They did not want to come off the wall. They fought me, screw and nail. Power drill or not, my fingers were hurting and bloody by the time I got them down, and when I threw them in the middle of the room, the walls were finally bare, and I stared at the paper. By now, it was like unwrapping a Christmas present, and as the last of it came off, I looked upon the words that I'd been waiting to find. I looked upon the last message of the Hargrave murders, and read Carter's final declaration. John Jr. was dead before Marguerite. He just didn't know it. John Jr. Hargrave, eldest of the Hargrave children, was 6 by the time I was born. He was a joyless child, but he had been raised by a banker, so what did we expect? My earliest memories of him was of this dour 6-year-old standing over my crib, looking down at me and saying nothing. It feels odd to realize that someone so young has such disdain for you before you've even seen a year. But that was John Jr. Father always said that Jr. had a mind for puzzles. Sudoku, crosswords, riddles. He loved them all. Above all else, though, he adored the tales of Sherlock Holmes. Mother had a framed photo of him from Halloween when he was 4 or 5, strutting about in his cloak and deerstalker hat, a magnifying glass to his eye. My brother was a detective before he even fully grasped what one was. Everything was a mystery or a case to him, and he loved finding the things that no one else could. The case of the missing hairbrush, the mystery of the lost textbook, the case of the muddy footprints. John Jr. solved them all, but he couldn't see his own murder at work. He graduated high school and went straight into police work. He graduated from the academy with honors, but the Griffin Police Department was too humble for someone like Jonathan Hargrave, Jr. He spent his evenings studying, preparing his body, steadying his hand, and was soon on to the FBI training facility at Quantico. After 4 years within the cocoon of excellence and a lot of recommendations from his instructors, John was ready for the big cases. Jonathan Hargrave, the man who thwarted the Louisiana diamond smugglers, who discovered the secret code in the gloating letters of the beachside killer, the man who discovered the communist commune in the hills of California. He worked with Scotland Yard, with Interpol, traveled the world, but it was never enough. What John Jr. wanted more than anything was a nemesis, a Moriarty for his Holmes. But this was the real world. People do not act against you without a damn good reason, and John felt his victories were hollow. He was fighting against drug smugglers and kidnappers, the dock workers of the crime world. He wanted a challenge. He wanted a real test of his mettle, and so he got it. He got exactly what he wanted, but it proved to be more than he bargained for. When Father died, he was the first to make excuses about why he must leave. He had to return to Washington. He was needed. He had to get back, or how else would they solve all the cases that had piled up? It was unfair of us to expect him to stay. Let one of the younger ones sacrifice themselves. He was too important, too valuable to be trapped here, and he really couldn't stay longer than the week it would take to recharge. I think, even then, as I sat quietly across from him at the table, I had already decided to kill him. Our patron provided the excuse, but I'd wanted him dead for years. In truth, he should have died before Marguerite. John Jr. was a lover of expensive tobacco. I think he thought it made him more Holmes-like, and he smoked pipes often, even though Mother had hated the habit. I had taken his tobacco and added a little something special before returning it. Persephone had gone on and on about the seeds of one of her new plants and how burning them could cause a peaceful haze in a person. I had tried it myself and found them quite soothing, but she warned that burning more than a few at a time could cause respiratory arrest. You would have something similar to an asthma attack, but nothing short of a tracheotomy would save you. Your throat would spasm, unable to take in air, and that would be that. I'd loaded the tin with seeds, ensuring that any pipeful would kill him. But somehow, he survived. I can't explain it. Perhaps it was sheer determination, but after Marguerite died, he was intent on finding her killer. I saw it on his face when he kicked her door open, looking upon the sibling he had always gotten along with the most, his second in command when it came to minding his youngers. I knew he felt alone. More than that, though, he knew he had a case to sink his teeth into, and I knew there was no better way to keep him here. He would stay until the case was solved, or my poison did for him. Either way, he would die here. After that, every night was a game of Clue. Who had done it? How had they done it? Why had they done it? He brought us all into the living room, explaining that Marguerite had been murdered. He laid out how it might have been done. He wanted our alibis, all of them pretty easy to prove or disprove, and none of them putting us in a position to have acted against her. I didn't even have to lie. When my older sister died, I was in the kitchen with Jasper and Persephone, drinking and positioning myself where others could see me. It went rather quickly after that. Venus went next, then Jasper, and each new death drove him deeper into madness. I thought each night would be his last. You could smell his damn pipe smoke throughout the house, but every morning he rose, coughing and sputtering, but still moving. I remember the night he accused Persephone, the way he told me I wasn't smart enough to pull off something like this. I almost laughed in his face as it got redder and redder. I could already tell he was having trouble breathing. His breath labored as he laid out his accusation. I hadn't killed him, not all at once, but it was slowly overtaking him. I expected he'd be dead by morning, but I couldn't wait that long. I left him smoking like a chimney and went to take care of Persephone. When I came back inside, the deed done, there he was at the top of the stairs. He was laughing, the sound of it like someone with tuberculosis, and he was bent double as he tried to get it up. He looked very precarious at the top of those stairs, and I wondered if gravity would do what I could not. I know it was you. I should have seen it from the start. You, and I wasn't sure I would hear it all before his throat closed, but he soldiered on. You poisoned them, made it look like Persephone. It was you the whole time, right? Right. Right. But that was his final word on the matter. John Jr. pitched forward, drawing in a final rattling breath before he did so, and plummeted down the stairs. I don't know if he broke his neck or just couldn't get air, but he was dead when he hit the ground. So fell the house of Hargrave, with only the youngest son to bear witness. I was alone, the will of my patron fulfilled, and now I was free to seek his favor. I sighed as I finished the dark telling, wishing they had saved some of that wine for me. I felt like a drink would have done me good. I knew where I needed to go. It was 2 doors down, but I didn't feel capable of making such a trip at that moment. He had done it. He had killed all of them. And here was his confession, writ large for all to see. I would not call Carter a likable character, but he was certainly the protagonist of this house of shadows. I searched through the mess and was rewarded with a silver flask in the roll top. The whiskey that lay inside was bitter and strong, but it took the edge off. I sat on John Jr.'s small bed and tipped more of the whiskey into my mouth. I didn't care if it was poisoned. This house had put enough of its poison into me, and I felt like a little more might be just what I needed. My watch told me it was midnight, and when I heard the tolling of a phantom grandfather clock, it felt like the ghosts within the house were becoming lively again. I got up, knowing where I needed to go while my spirits were still risen. There was only one ghost left to wake up, the ghost of my mysterious tour guide in this haunted mansion of secrets. I held no illusion that he would provide any answers. I held nothing but dread for what I must uncover at the end of this long road. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Army Dude for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton contributors. And thanks to Oh Snap, Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Grim Reaper, TomBoiTopUwU, and Queen Sheebah for being our ghostly reader tier contributors. And a big thanks to Scott Donahue for being our ghostly writer tier contributor. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. my time, of course. And while ghostly reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in hopefully a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.